Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if we can start introductions on this side.
Tom Dunlop, city member.
Terry Withrow, county member.
Amy Bublak, city member.
Mike Van Winkle, city alternate.
Kristen Olson, county alternate.
Sarah Lytle Penny, executive officer.
Rob Terrell, LAFCO counsel.
Javier Camarena, assistant executive officer.
Jennifer Goss, commission clerk.
Great. Welcome all. This is time open for the public comment. Anybody wishing to speak in regard to anything other than what's on the agenda is welcome to do so at this time. Please come up to the lectern. Seeing nothing, we'll close the public comment time and move on to the approval of minutes. Anybody?
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
I have a motion.
I'll second that.
And a second. All in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
And against, say nay. Okay, it passes unanimous. Correspondence.
You do have a packet of specific correspondence related to item 7A, selection of a public member in front of you tonight, consisting of 5 letters of recommendation. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Declaration of conflicts and disqualifications, looking to my left, right, having none. Moving on. Consent item. We have one item on consent item, municipal service review, sphere and influence update, Riverdale Park Track Community Service. Is anybody here from the community that wanted to open this and speak to it? Give you that opportunity. Okay, if not, then consent item, what's the will of the commission?
Move to approve.
Motion to approval?
Second.
And a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Passes unanimous. On to other business.
We are at selection of a public member. This is a continuation of selection that occurred at our last meeting. We reopened the recruitment as directed by the commission. We received 4 new applications, so we have 6 total candidates. The commission can choose to ask each of them to make a statement and then deliberate, and then hopefully the recommendation is to choose a public member.
All right. All right, then why don't we start with just if the 6 people want to come up independently, just whoever gets up here first, and we'll just get up here and say what you'd like to say if you feel the need, or if you feel like you said it already. I wasn't here last time, so I'd love to hear what you have to say, though. Mr. Berryhill.
Okay. Bill Berryhill, farmer here in Stanislaus County my whole life. Served in the state assembly, served on school board in Ceres Unified for 11 years, 4 years in Sacramento. I feel like I've talked to a few people that had commented to me that this would be something I might enjoy. I do think it's a very important work that LAFCO does. And I think it's an area that, with my lifetime commitment to agriculture in Stanislaus County, I think I'd be well suited for this board. I know some of you, and you're all good folks, and would look forward to getting your support here this evening. Happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Any questions of him? None? Thank you.
That was simple.
Any other candidate wishing to speak?
Thank you, Commissioners. I am Amy Hussar. My husband and I are raising 4 sons in the city of Patterson. I'm probably a little different than your other candidates, as I am not a native Californian. I was born and raised in Upper Michigan in a small city called Marquette. And in Michigan, it's about trees, not farmland, but all 4 of my grandparents grew up on dairy farms, so I'm well familiar with the background there. I served 4 years on the Patterson School Board from 2011 to 2015, so I've been off for a couple years now. That was a family change. My husband was working for the Army at the time and going back to school, so we had to make a little change. Now he works for the Corps of Engineers in Knights Ferry, so it's a little different now. I have 5 years of Army service. between the Army and the Army Reserves. So the background I have with that is I have the advantage of living in a lot of different kinds of cities. In college, I lived in first a small city called Albion, and then a larger city called Kalamazoo, home of Western Michigan University. I was stationed in Washington, D.C., which is a large city, and then in California, we've lived in large and small as well. So seeing the effects of growth and development and what happens when it's done right, and when there are some troubles and the services can't keep up with what's going on, I've found it's been really important to, kind of keep an eye on that and see how things are going. I have children coming up who, we want to make sure we have a balance in what we leave for their generations and their children and beyond. So I'm sorry I don't have any letters of recommendation or anything like that, but that's not the world I walk in. I work in the schools and I volunteer with 4-H, so it's a little different kind of folks that I work with. But I was telling the director that I saw the advertisement on the City of Patterson website because she had asked me where I saw it. So I've been tracking some of the issues for a few years. I run a community civics education group called the Patterson Community Forum. We're trying to engage the community a little more in learning about the various bodies within state and local government and federal as well. It's important to learn all about it, and it's kind of slow going, but it's an important job, and it's one I've been interested in probably since high school. So, my interest in this position is twofold. I want to look at the future generations, my children, their friends, their children, but also as a matter of public outreach and being able to talk with people and teach them more about what the organization does. So if you have any questions, I welcome them.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pat Gillum, Patricia Gillum, depending on how long you've known me. I'm still excited about the possibility of being on the, I know I was here last time, on the board. LAFCO is a very important position. The public member has trust from the public. It doesn't have a bias. It doesn't have an agenda. I'm just a citizen of the county, City of Modesto specifically, but that's what I want to be. I want to be able to see and share the vision that both the cities and the counties have for Stanislaus County. And it's going to be a balancing act because it always is. Everyone has their interest, but I believe that I can do that. Let me tell you just a little bit about me. First of all, most of my things that I've done in the past have been behind the scenes, if you will. I'm a lifelong resident of Modesto. I was a single mom for 14 years. My first job was, my first real job, I say, was at the bank in Waterford. I worked there for 3 years. And then I worked at a civil engineering firm for 25 years as their CFO. It did give me the advantage of being able to do some research for LAFCO at the time, so it was way back then when I wasn't even thinking about anything except raising my child. During that time, I also went to school at night, got my AA, my BS, and my master's with distinction. Then I went on to earn my CPA license, and I've been a CPA for 19 years. So I've done a lot of things. All the while, I was a den mother on Saturday mornings because that's when I could do it since I was working and going to school. I was a church school administrator, and I was a member of the PTA all during that time, so I can juggle a lot of hats, and I enjoy that. After my graduation and got my CPA license, I've been on several boards, the Family Connections Adoptions for special need adoptions, the Children's Crisis Center for 20 years. I'm a emeritus board member. I've been on the chamber board, primarily internal operations, doing what we do as CPAs, trying to keep their books in order. And I'm on the board of the Vision Impaired Person Support, commonly known as VIPS, for people who are going blind and helping them to maintain their independence. I've been on I was on the first Community Qualities Forum. We really enjoyed figuring out the garbage cans. I was on the BZA for 2 years and the Planning Commission for 8 years, and on the Citizens Redevelopment Committee. My public service primarily has been in Lions, and I've been a Lion. I was past district governor, 08-09, and I brought 64 clubs together with a vision of growing and helping people in the community. This year, I was just recently awarded the International President's Excellence Award for kind of lifetime service, if you will, because I've been in for 25 years. It was really a very cool thing. They only give out about 6 a year, so I was very, very honored. I believe I can serve the LAFCO well because of my knowledge from my working career, my experience on the commissions and boards that I've been on. I have the tenacity to see things through and make sure things get done. Collaborator, especially with the Lions Club. 64, some all men, some all women, and I had to keep reminding them all that we're just doing Lion stuff. We're just doing Lion stuff. And of course, as an independent. Independence is not only in actuality, it's also in perception. And that's what I've learned as a CPA. You have to have clarity and transparency in everything that you do, and I believe that I can do that. Regardless of who you choose tonight, I trust in your judgment to be fair, impartial, and going to the tenets of what a public member should be on LAFCO. No interest, no bias. I thank you very much, and I wish you a nice night.
Thank you. Mr. Beekman.
Good evening. I will have to say it is easier to sit up there than it is to talk from here. This is a new experience for me. I'm sure, knowing you all do your homework, you've seen my application, but just to possibly expand upon that, I know we had two people that weren't here last time. Regarding my education, I'm a graduate at UC Berkeley. I have 2 degrees from Berkeley. I had a degree in political science and also a degree in political economy of industrial societies. And with that, I took a lot of business classes, economics, and also took a couple city planning classes. And that's really where my interest in city planning started back in college. Professionally, I'm a beekeeper. I'm a 3rd generation of my family to run bees in Stanislaus County. And in my generation, I've expanded the business and basically run bees in almost every county, definitely every county in the San Joaquin Valley, run bees in a lot of Southern California and the foothills and the Central Coast. And really have had incredible broad exposure to agriculture, been able to work with companies such as Monsanto to small organic growers. And with that broad exposure to agriculture really, in my opinion, puts me a clear context of how special Stanislaus County really is. Stanislaus County is now the 5th largest agricultural county in the United States. With that comes great opportunities and also great responsibilities. And that's one of the reasons why I'm such an adamant LAFCO supporter. Agriculture is central to our economy, is central to our business climate, and we need to do whatever we can to sustain it and support it and embrace it. In terms of my public service, I served over 13 years in the city of Houston in the capacity initially as a planning commissioner, city council member, and lastly as a mayor. The way to kind of sum up my 13 years in Houston was I really felt like I was kind of the guy who got to clean up the mess. Obviously, with other council members, we did a great job. But initially, as a planning commissioner, after being on the planning commission for 6 months, I realized that we hadn't updated our general plan, I think, in almost 20 years. And this is something that was highly contentious in our community. And I lobbied that we should do that again. And people said, "That's a great idea, Matt. Let's do it. You're chair." And so I got to carry that ball. And within less than a year as chair, we actually got a general plan done very successfully. And we were very inclusive with our community. And this is one thing I brag about all the time. As my experience as a planning commissioner chair, we had in Houston now, remember Houston, we had up to 50 people, sometimes more than 50 people in our council chambers showing up to planning commission meetings because our community was very engaged. And people showed up a little upset a lot of times, but after every meeting, one of the things I'm most proud of, everyone left happy and felt like they were heard. And really, it was an awesome experience because our community came together and we got a result that we could all agree with. And that's something to this day I really take a lot of pride in. As a city council member, one of my issues, our fiscal house was not in order, and that was one thing I was pretty adamant about on the budget and finance committee I served on. And I'm really proud to say after I left. We had our general fund reserve account was almost 100% of our general fund revenue. So, what that means is Houston could operate for almost an entire year without any additional revenue to our general fund. So we really did that. We did that with a lot of sacrifice. And the one thing I learned through that entire process is to be constructive, you have to be collaborative, you have to listen to both sides, and you have to take a long-term view. And that's something I've learned from my public service. And really through understanding the linkage between land use and fiscal responsibility is why I became so adamant about LAFCO. This is really, for our county, is the last line of defense against improper planning that is going to really adversely impact taxpayers and ratepayers. And I'm running for the public seat, and I think my views definitely reflect the public. People value our ag land, and people, ratepayers, taxpayers, do not want to subsidize bad development. It needs to carry its on its own weight. It needs to be an enhancement to our county. So with that, I'll turn it over and answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. So I want to start off by saying my name is Amanda Sorensen. I personally believe Matt Beekman is the most qualified for this position. However, I decided to apply as at the last meeting it was suggested that someone from the actual public apply. So here I am, born and raised in Keys, moved out of Keys and moved into Salida at 23 when I bought my house. Currently work for Doctors Medical Center. Started 2 nonprofits here in Stanislaus County, Salida Chamber of Commerce and Stanislaus Humanists. I also serve on Salida Municipal Advisory Council as a secretary, and I am also secretary of Stanislaus Humanists and Salida Chamber of Commerce. And that's all I have. Any questions?
I actually do have a question because I found it very intriguing on your application about Stanislaus Humanists, just because I've never heard about it before. What is that organization, and can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so we're a secular organization. We try to do things like community outreach. We've helped with the Tuolumne River cleanups. We've also helped with the focus on prevention. We've created homeless care packages that we've passed out at Graceta Park, here in Salida, at places downtown, some of the parks off of Orangeburg and Carver, I forget the name. But we try to be involved in the community as much as we can and try to provide a voice to people who identify themselves as, not very religious, but still want to help in their community. So we try to do that voice and that support for that type of community in the county.
Great. Thanks for your service.
Thanks. Any questions?
Any other questions? Thank you for
All
your
right,
time.
thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ed Pattison. Looks like I'm batting cleanup here. And I believe I'm amid some distinguished colleagues. I think you have a great choice before you. I'm a native Californian. I am married. We have 4 children. I live in the college area of Modesto and have been here in Modesto since 1994. Plan on living in Modesto the rest of my life and seeing generations come up, and I'm interested in giving back to the community. I saw the advertisement in the Modesto Bee, and I thought that was a great opportunity. I've been looking for different ways to give back to the community, and having a very great level of interest in water and land use planning that dates back to the 80s. I thought this would be a great opportunity. I have worked with a number of different LAFCOs over my career. I'm the general manager of Mountain House Community Services District. If you don't know about it, it is a beautiful master plan community in California, the first ever to grow out of the ground in San Joaquin County that's near the Altamont Pass. It operates as a full municipality, so don't let the Community Services District take you sideways. It is very much growing right now. Having worked with various LAFCOs, I have worked through general plan updates, municipal service reviews, annexations. I've done it on from the practitioner side, where I've actually written these MSRs, general plans, updates, and annexations. I oversee those projects now, but I've been on both sides of that. I've been in Modesto for quite some time. What brought me to Modesto was the Modesto Irrigation District. I'm a graduate of UC Davis. I was interested in water and land use planning, as I mentioned. I was able to weave together an interesting degree of soils, water science, hydrogeology, and land use planning. And I was afforded an opportunity to go into private consulting immediately after Davis, and I worked for Jones & Stokes in downtown Sacramento. At the time, in the early 90s, they were considered one of the stellar land use water planning consulting firms in California. I was really able to, young person coming out of college, I thought I knew everything, and in the first couple of years at Jones & Stokes, I realized these older people have been around the block a few times, and they have a lot of experience that I can learn from. So I was able to really gain a lot of experience working for Jones & Stokes. But an opportunity arose at Modesto Irrigation District to manage water, which is really a passion of mine. I had my first child. My mother was in Merced. Our family's in Merced at the time. It was an opportunity. She said, Ed, I think you need to apply for that hydrologist job. I was happy in Davis, really didn't have any desire to change. But as I was visiting family one week, and I stopped by MID downtown here, probably 1994, and typically I would provide a full application, resume, cover letter, spend a lot of time on it, but I had to check the box for mom and filled out the application right there at the counter. Next thing I know, I was working for MID. So that was my entry to Modesto, and it was a great opportunity. I don't believe in chance. I think that I was definitely there for a reason. MID was going through a lot of change. There was a lot of urbanization. There was a groundwater depression under the city of Modesto. We ushered in the surface water treatment plant at the time. There was the FERC relicensing, revisitation on in-stream flows, something that you probably read about in headlines now as they're looking at the new license. And what that offered me was a chance to really, I come from a farming background as well. That gave me an opportunity to work with farmers here in Stanislaus County. We were talking about irrigation efficiency, irrigation district modernization. We conducted an irrigation master plan. It was really a bottom-up approach to improving services at the Modesto Irrigation District at the time. And being a young guy with a lot of experience and an opportunity to participate in all the above, it was basically grad school every day for me during the 90s working for Modesto Irrigation District. But again, I had opportunities to move on and get into municipal management. Since then, I've been managing cities. And having worked with cities, I've been able to work through everything that involves full municipalities, from fire EMS to law enforcement, and everything having to do with land use plans, subdivision agreements, developer agreements. So vast experience working on both sides of the municipalities, the agricultural sector, and so on. And I think that as I look about how do I give back to the community, the public member here is extremely important. I agree with all the comments that my colleagues this evening have shared with you. LAFCO is extremely important. Stanislaus County has great opportunities, both for economic development, but as the gentleman before me mentioned, agriculture has been here and helped form Stanislaus County for over a century, and we need to make sure they're sustainable. And I think that there's a way to thread the needle to allow our cities to prosper, develop economically, while preserving and sustaining agriculture. I believe I have that unique experience that's both municipal and agricultural to lend my expertise to your commission. I think I'll wrap up by saying that, I did want to mention, I was on the original members that formed the Stanislaus and Tuolumne Rivers Groundwater Basin Association. So as we look at land use planning and preserving orderly growth and agriculture, I think it's important. It's part of the Cal LAFCO's objectives to include water supply planning, which is huge. It's going on right now. I know you're all aware of it. And it's not only surface water supplies, but it's groundwater through the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. I have vast experiences in both surface water management, water rights, and groundwater, and I'm able to lend that unique expertise to your commission. So I think with that, I'm going to wrap up so I don't take any more of your time, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. You have my full resume and some of the short responses in the application. So I appreciate your time, and I thank you for it.
Questions?
I just have a comment, and it
Sure.
may fall on deaf ears, but just want to make sure you do know we have several city, county, and irrigation district executive positions available in our county right now.
I'm
So
aware.
I
I'm happy
encourage you
in
to
my
look at them.
current position, but thank you. I am aware. And there are,
Not that we ever participate in poaching, but might want to look.
those are very tough positions, every single one of them. My current is not without challenge, so yes, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I will open the public comment part, and we have 2 cards here. We can start with these, and if anybody else wants to speak. First will be Dr. Gammon.
Thank you, Chair Bublak. And I'm here to support the election of Matthew Beekman to alternative commissioner. And I think he's already summarized his qualifications, which are overwhelmingly, I think, exemplary and exactly what LAFCO needs. LAFCO, like the rest of America, needs to focus. You need to focus on what your objectives are, as you state right here up front, and what the purpose of this commission is. The purpose is to preserve agricultural land resources, number one, and to discourage urban sprawl. If you don't do that, if you don't focus on those objectives, then you simply aren't doing your jobs as LAFCO. I'm a member of the public. You're spending almost $500,000 of our money, the public's money. That comes down on the next item here. You need to be responsible to the public. The public does not want urban sprawl. Any of us that have driven the roads to the Bay Area recently realize it's just out of control. Any of us with minds would say we don't want to encourage more cars, more commuters, more conversion of our unique resource in this county, which is agricultural. It's the industry that drives the whole economy in this county. And it's unique. It's unique for America. It's unique for the world. And once we've paved it over, it can't be undone. It's also irresponsible of the commission to plan urban development on lands that are in floodplains, on lands that are uniquely producing almonds and walnuts and so on. So I think that Matt Beekman understands the complexities of what's before us. And frankly, you need his input. And particularly, I would urge Commissioner Olson, who's a public member, to support his candidacy for this very important job on your commission. You know Matt Beekman. He served with you. He served more than 5 years in really significant positions: mayor, commissioner, planning commissioner. And you also know, as commissioners, how complex these decisions are. I mean, for every meeting, you get this big packet that's incredibly complex. And the decisions that you make are not only very complex, but challenging to people that have even studied it and had experience. I think it is positive that you have all these applicants, and I'm very much for people being interested in LAFCO. But I'm asking you to please focus. Focus on the objectives. Let's get the job done that you're appointed and elected to do for ourselves and for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Gammon.
Good evening, Chair Bublak and Commissioners. It is harder to be here than up there. Just to make a correction, I know Dr. Gammon's my husband, but I need to correct him. Ms. Olson is not public. She is representing supervisor. Sorry, Alan.
You can do that to your husband. It's okay.
What? Tonight I come to state my support for Matt Beekman to be appointed the public member for LAFCO. It is my opinion that in July 2015, the majority of mayors, namely Catan of Newman, Paul of Oakdale, O'Brien of Riverbank, Molina of Patterson, and Van Winkle of Waterford, voted to oust Mr. Beekman off LAFCO board because he favored a farmland preservation policy which did not reflect what they asked Matt to do, and that was to support cities and help cities. Matt Beekman was voting his conscience, which is not only appropriate, but also a right. He voted with the consistency of one central goal of LAFCO, and that is to preserve ag land while promoting orderly growth. I do miss sitting up there, by the way. I'll get off my... there are many qualified candidates tonight, and it was very interesting to listen to all of them. That was very encouraging that the advertisement really pulled some applications in. But my support for Mr. Beekman does not diminish also their qualifications. There are very qualified people coming before you tonight. I come before you tonight hoping you vote for a very qualified candidate and reinstate a LAFCO seat as the public member, which was, in my opinion, taken from him without just cause in 2015. We live in a democracy, and we lose our right to vote, our conscience, then we are going backwards and not reflecting the progress that so many before us have fought for. I gave a copy of my written statement tonight, but I'm going to add just a little paragraph more. I know it is probably going to be hard to imagine for some of you to have Matt Beekman, if he is selected, to be sitting up there. But I think that's the beauty of democracy. And I think when I watch other people, other commissions, other entities, it is nice to have differing opinions on things, and that's what makes a very vibrant commission. I am very passionate about protecting farmland. When I was the planning commissioner at Stanislaus County, I fought for it, and 4 years as an alternate public member for LAFCO, I think I voted for it. I spoke my mind on that. So I hope you make a wise decision tonight. Like I say, the candidates tonight are all very qualified, and I congratulate all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in public wishing to speak on behalf of any other candidate? Any last comments? If not, I'll go ahead and close the public comment, bring it back to the commission. What's the will of the commission?
You know, I'd like to, if I could, and Dr. Gammon, Alan, you already talked about the purpose of LAFCO and kind of the mission statement. And I'd like, if I could, Chair, just ask each one of the candidates to come back up here and tell me what they think. I even know we've already said what they think it is and what they think about the purpose of LAFCO. Would that be okay? I know we could have done it when they were here, but I wanted everybody to have their chance to talk before we did that. About the purpose of LAFCO. What's the reason for us all being up here?
Absolutely. Let's go in the same order as, or backwards, so we don't want you to be the last gentleman. So, Ed, if you want to come up first. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to come back again. LAFCO's mission is to preserve orderly growth, to preserve open space in agriculture, efficiency and economic development for all the above, but also to ensure local agencies are run efficiently, hence the municipal service review requirement every 5 years. So that's the primary mission of LAFCO, and I could provide more detail, but I think that's enough for now.
And you're feeling that is the mission, and as far as your ability to uphold that, you feel you have any problem upholding that?
I have really valued good land use planning and water planning purposes in every job that I've held, and have received a number of accolades and recommendations for a job well done. I know that your commission's looking for a fresh face. I'm a public member. I know that I do this for a living, day in, day out. That's the experience that I offer your commission. But I don't work in Stanislaus County. There's some good, there's some bad there, which is one of the reasons I want to give back to this community. I'm going to be here through the rest of my life and through my 4 children's lives. And I think I have some unique talents that I didn't hear tonight from some of the other candidates, as distinguished as they are. They're going to be able to assist your commission from a public member point of view, be able to thread that needle between preserving open space and agriculture, as well as foster economic development through our communities, which is a very significant issue for all of our cities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then Amanda. Thank you.
So I know LAFCO is here because after World War II, super land growth in California, so other Governor Brown formed LAFCO for all of 52 counties. So I know that now that they're bound by the Hertz-Cortez Act, I think that's right, but Hertz-Cortez Act, and that's their guidance that they follow. And I know that they review all the municipalities, whether they're the big ones or the small ones, all the community services districts, anything that has to do with anything in the county. And I do feel like I can uphold that and do a very good job on this planning commission.
Okay, thanks,
Thank
Amanda.
Mr. Beekman?
I'll try to be concise here. Basically, LAFCO's responsibility is to ensure orderly growth. That's probably the simplest way I can state it. And in the process of doing that, preserve open space and preserve agricultural land. And its primary mechanism for doing that is the municipal service review process. And the MSR process, from a governor's perspective, really is brilliant. I think it's just really embraces transparency, accountability. In my experience, when I first got on the Houston City Council, offers a tremendous resource to the people that it serves through that MSR by really detailing the capabilities of the municipal entity that it's writing about. And through the process of renewing your MSRs, you're reanalyzing these municipalities, and then when any of those entities, when they change their boundaries, they have to get LAFCO approval, thus annexation approval, and things like that. So that was my summary.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Pat?
LAFCO was basically formed because we weren't doing a good job. We were letting urban sprawl go wherever. I said it my first time out that I remember when Beano's went in and there were orchards in between, and I'm going, this doesn't seem right. And I was only in high school, so I even knew then that that wasn't right. But what LAFCO is supposed to do is to give a mechanism to be able to have orderly growth, preserve farmland, and do it in a manner that is good for everyone. Not one issue, not one side, not the other, but what's good for the vision of what do we want to be in Stanislaus County. Recently I've heard that Stanislaus County is the armpit county, and it upset me greatly because it's not true. And I think we have distinguished people up there that can that can make good decisions going forward. Some of the decisions in the past were terrible, but because they can, I think if we come together and think of the county as a whole, we have wonderful ag. We want open space. City people want to live in the city, that's okay, but it can't be willy-nilly. It has to be orderly and efficient services to those communities, because we don't have unlimited resources to be able to just continue without proper thinking. And I think that's what LAFCO is supposed to do, is supposed to be that buffer. And let's think about it before we make a mistake. Let's take that extra time to look at everything and make sure that we are on the same page, going in the same direction, and have a great idea of what Stanislaus County is not to be. And I don't want to hear anymore that we're the armpit of the counties.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Amy?
Thank you again for the opportunity. You can't get everything in an introduction. As you know, I live in Patterson, which has a little bit different perspective from living in the city. Years ago, my husband and I lived in Modesto, in one of the islands, if you will, so I experienced some of that firsthand. I didn't know a lot about LAFCOs, admittedly, until probably about halfway through my term on school board, so probably around 2014 when they were going through the ag mitigation stuff. I had some learning experiences from some of my fellow board members and members of the community. As I've stated previously, I've lived all over the country, and I've seen what can happen when you don't approach it responsibly, particularly on the East Coast. Some of that is because it's a lot of older development is kind of piecemeal. And if you go forward and orderly, as I stated in my application, the purpose is to kind of be a organizer, if you will, and just make sure, okay, you don't have duplication, you can deal with your boundary disputes and so forth. What I'm particularly interested in comes with those municipal services reviews, and every 5 years it's important because you have to make sure that your growth, you have the capacity to reach that growth. That's important. I've lived in a couple places where it was kind of a nightmare, quite frankly. So, living in I wouldn't say Patterson is really rural because it's 22,000 people, but we're surrounded by rural going all the way up to the, up into the canyon, north and south, and even east to the river. So it's just been a very interesting learning experience for me. I do believe it's absolutely important because it can go horribly wrong on that side, I'm considering how they're still growing. So I believe in balance, always have, and I'm interested in contributing to that. And along with that, it's just a very important job, and I don't think enough people know about it. So thank you again.
It's interesting to me that you lived in one of Modesto's county islands. Can you speak to us a little bit about that and your experience in terms of how you may or may not relate that to LAFCO decisions?
Well, that's still kind of a new concept to me because I remember we moved there, and a lot of things, I went to the city and they said, no, you have to go to the county, you have to go here, you have to go there, and I thought, this is crazy. We're surrounded by urban, yet we don't have a lot of these services. As it turned out, we ended up moving to be closer to my husband's job, but it strikes me as a challenge because I looked at the maps and I said, wow, that's really interesting. There's a bit here and a bit here and a bit there, and over the long term we may see some changes. I kind of listen to the talk here and there, so I read the paper and I watch the meetings and such, and it's just a lot. I'm used to coming from a place where that's all coordinated, and you go to one place, kind of like a one-stop shop. I mean, it's ultimately under the responsibility, whatever district has it, whether it's a city or the fire protection or health or whatever, but you still have to have some oversight with that because, like I said, it can go wrong sometimes.
Were you aware of that issue when you moved there?
No, I was not, no. That's not something landlords tell you. But I tell you, once we bought, we did our homework. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, because every other place has either been within a city or it has been completely rural out in the township. But even then, so I'm going to speak from the Michigan perspective, we lived in a township, but they were coordinated. They didn't have anything like this at all. But I think a lot of people that I talk to just out and about in the community, between the American Legion and the Boy Scouts for my sons and the 4-H, a lot of people, they don't know this, and then they come in, they're going, what is this? They don't understand. And sometimes to try and talk to them in the common language that they're used to is a bit of a challenge. I mean, even with school stuff, which you'd think a lot of people would know that, they just didn't. So it's a lot of policy and translating and, just looking ahead. You have your short term, your intermediate, and your long term. So,
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
And Bill?
Yeah, I think your mission has been articulated very well by a number of the candidates here. You know, I see LAFCO as really striking that balance between orderly growth in our county, making sure that we are preserving our ag lands to the extent that we can, but cities have to grow at some point. Talking to the mayor of Ceres a while back, they issued 0 building permits. So clearly preserving ag land hasn't probably been the toughest thing that this LAFCO board has had to face for a while, because there has been no building. The time will come when it starts to pick back up, and I think it's this board's duty to create good policy in growth as the economy starts to pick up in the valley. And so that's kind of where I see. I know there are other issues that come before LAFCO. When I was in the legislature, San Joaquin County had a major issue with the LAFCO board between a eminent domain with PG&E power lines, and it was a very contentious issue, but you got to be able to deal with those kinds of things. And so that's kind of where I see what you guys do, and would love to be a part of that. Questions?
That's good.
Thanks,
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Okay, since we reopened this public hearing, any last persons in the public who want to speak again? Okay, we'll close it once more. Bring it back. Before I ask the will, I just want to thank everybody. We got more people involved this time, and it's always representative of that this is a commission that's doing something good and people want to be involved in it. So thank each and every one of you for applying, and let's see what the will of the commission is.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of start it off here if I could. So again, I thank everybody, as Amy did, for being here tonight. I appreciate people wanting to get involved. I know we started off with 2 candidates and to 6, and I just appreciate everybody stepping up and wanting to be a part of this. We need more of that, so that's great. So we have a few different people here than we had last time we attempted to vote, and I'm going to take this back to where we were last time when we had this meeting with the 2 candidates that we had, and I'm going to once again bring up Matt Beekman. I am very much in favor of Matt, as I very much appreciate his knowledge in this area. He is known throughout the state with his knowledge in LAFCO, and I very much appreciate Pat and all that she's done and her knowledge too. And I see nothing but good that could come by bringing Matt back onto this board with his knowledge with regard to LAFCO and the issues that we come up against each month we meet here. So I'm going to try this again and just see if we have any change, and one more time give Matt a shot. So I would like to start it off, if I could, by nominating, making a motion that we approve Matt as the public member.
Okay, we have a motion. I'll give a courtesy second for you, if you'd like. We'll go ahead and take a vote. Pardon me? Okay. All in favor of, well, actually, let's do a roll call, please.
No.
Yes.
No.
No.
Okay, so we still have a position open?
So I'll make some comments unless Supervisor Withrow wants to continue first.
Go ahead.
Okay. So first, I want to echo Supervisor Withrow's comments that I really appreciate the interest of all the applicants tonight. Putting yourself out there, whether it's for appointed office or elected office, is not an easy thing to do. And it amazes me how many commissions we have and elected bodies throughout our county that we don't have enough applicants for. So thank you for your interest in this very important commission, and it is very important. When I first got involved in community politics, first as a Modesto City Planning Commissioner, and then when I first ran for City Council back in 2005, the very reason I ran was because I was very frustrated over what I perceived as a lack of planning when it came to how our community would grow, where our community would grow, grow, what would be required consistent with that growth. And that's why I decided to get involved. I wanted to see a better quality of life, more community pride for my kids and future generations of people so that they would want to live and thrive in Stanislaus County. And I know that all 6 of you feel very much the same way. And so I admire all of you for applying today. You're all very well qualified. That would be the other thing I would say, is that as I've reviewed applicants for a number of different commissions, sometimes it's discouraging, the applicant pools that we have, and I wouldn't say that about any of you. So I encourage you, obviously there's only one position tonight, but I hope all of you continue to try to get involved in other things in our community, because we need your input and we need your active engagement. One thing that I learned during my years in the Assembly over the last 6 years is that, unfortunately, for better or for worse, politics can destroy policy, even when it's unfair. And I couldn't agree more with my colleague Supervisor Withrow that I think Matt Beekman is extremely well qualified for this position. I know 3 of the 6 of you personally, and this is a really hard decision to deal with. You know, of all meetings for me to have to serve as the alternate, it would be this one. So this is tricky, but as I said, unfortunately, I fear that politics can destroy good policy. And that really has been my hesitation with appointing somebody who used to serve on this body, regardless of your positions. As I said, I think Matt Beekman served this community extremely well, both as mayor and as a member of LAFCO. I think it's unfortunate that things happened the way they happened, but my fear would be if we return to a similar body, that we would be going backwards instead of forwards for our community, and that this commission, not because of Mr. Beekman, but because of the makeup as a whole, would become more political oriented than it would be policy oriented. And I just think that's holding our community back. So then I'm left to look at the others. And then, unfortunately, I think Ms. Gillum gets caught up in the very same problem. And again, to no fault of yours, just as to no fault of Matt's. But as I read about what happened at the last meeting, again, to me, from my perspective, as I think an outsider to LAFCO, this is the second LAFCO meeting I have ever attended, I just worry that it would become more political than policy-based. And again, to no fault of either applicant. So that leads me to look at the remaining 4 applicants. And that's tough. I think you all are very well served. I will say I served with Mr. Berryhill for 4 years. I know his record very well. I know he has not just the talk associated with, but a concrete record that any of us could look at balance. And I think that's what all of us are responsible for on any given day, is balancing perspectives. It's not easy. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong, but balance needs to be the goal. And I think Mr. Berryhill would be a good compromise decision in that regard. Again, I think any of the 6 of you would do a fine job on this commission, but that's the way I'm looking at it. From where I stand today, I will tell you, as I've told others, I didn't know what decision I was going to make. What I do want to make sure is we come out of tonight with a decision made. The worst thing that could happen is if we leave tonight without a decision made. And so that's going to be my #1 priority going into whatever the vote and decision is of this board tonight. But toward that end, I would make a motion to appoint Bill Berryhill to LAFCO.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Yes.
You know, I think the only way we're going to get through this thing, we do need to make a decision tonight. And I think if I don't vote yes on this, we are not going to make a decision tonight. And so my vote is yes.
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 Okay, thank you again for everybody who did apply, and please keep an eye on us and help us in any way you can, and there will be openings obviously as the years progress. And Mr. Berryhill, welcome to our commission. So we'll move on to the public hearing, the LAFCO budget.
Okay, so tonight the Commission will be reviewing the LAFCO final budget for fiscal year 2017-2018. Last month, the Commission approved the proposed budget for LAFCO. During the meeting, there was some discussion regarding the Commission's remaining fund balance and reserve funds, as well as GASB 68, and that will be the focus of tonight's discussion as well. In reviewing the Commission's estimated fund balance at year end, we should be at a little over $300,000. Of this amount, we designate reserve funds based on the Commission's policy for two categories: a general reserve fund, which is 15% of operating expenses, and an accrued leave fund, and that covers cash out liability for your employees. This leaves the Commission with approximately $154,000 in undesignated fund balance. At the Commission's really at the Commission's recommendation, and as we've been budgeting over the years, our fund balance has been slowly declining, and this is a means essentially to offset agency contributions over the years. The Commission's policy, this isn't a bad thing necessarily, but the Commission's policy is if we have any excess fund balance above and beyond our reserves, we would give that back to funding agencies. I should note, going back, the fund balance itself, you're not seeing it go down to zero because that $150,000 or so that it's staying at is what is maintaining our reserves. I also wanted to give you kind of an idea of what the city and county allocations look like. We mentioned this a little bit last time, but actually seeing it is a whole different idea. LAFCO is funded by contributions from the county and 9 cities. The county automatically is apportioned a half share, and the cities split the remaining half based on their revenues, and it's proportional. The revenues are recalculated every year, of course, and so that percentage that you're seeing for some of the smaller cities tends to fluctuate slightly based comparatively on their revenues. But generally speaking, between county and city of Modesto, those account for about 80% of LAFCO's budget. And this is also something I showed you last time, just gives you an idea of agency contributions as it relates to our total operating budget. And you can see kind of the subsidizing or offsetting agency contributions with fund balance that's been occurring for the last couple of years, and then what we project will be occurring in our upcoming years as our contributions and budget become more aligned. So since our last meeting, LAFCO staff met with county auditor to gain some further clarification about a liability that's being reported on the Commission's balance sheet. And this is actually common among all public agencies. You're required now to report an unfunded pension liability on a balance sheet. For us, that pension liability is showing as $168,000 some odd. It is a long-term liability. We got some clarification from the county auditor about how this is actually calculated, what it actually means. This is essentially a number reflecting the health of Stanislaus retirement system as broken down proportionally for LAFCO's 3 employees. So this is a very, very small percentage of, in other words, Stanislaus' overall pension liability, the unfunded portion of it. It's meant more as something to be reported and not necessarily something that is due today. It's not a number that's going to stay stationary as well. It's also dependent a lot on investment return. It's going to depend on the annual contributions to Stanislaus. It's really there as more of a notice to be reported for agencies, especially those agencies that may have a huge number of liability and agencies that are participating in an unhealthy retirement system. But for us, the number is relatively small, but could also fluctuate. Kind of overlapping here. As I said, there is a lot of uncertainty with it. It is mainly just for reporting purposes, for accounting purposes. We also spoke a little bit about what other agencies are doing, including the county. And it was noted the county is not currently setting aside any additional reserves for GASB 68. At the end of our discussion, we said that setting aside any additional reserves above and beyond what we're doing now is not currently recommended, given the uncertainties about time frame, given that this is just essentially reflecting Stan Sarah's system and what our proportion of that would be. It was not recommended to set aside additional reserves. At the last meeting, the commission had two, well, actually, they directed staff to present options showing the potential for setting aside additional reserves. So in your packet, there's two options described. One is essentially maintaining the commission's existing reserve policy. We would recalculate that annually. There's some charts in there showing our offset to agency contributions that would occur as in previous years. It would be roughly $70,000 that we would offset, taking contribution levels back to what they were 2 years ago, actually. The second option would be to set aside additional reserves. The commission could designate an additional $25,000 as a long-term liability. Again, there's some uncertainties there about what that would actually mean, and then also the total long-term liability fluctuating annually. So this shows you option one. This is also detailed in your packet. What we would do is the undesignated fund balance, we would apply 70,000 of that. There's also mention of a strategy where obviously we're not returning the entire undesignated fund balance in this 1 year. We don't want to see a huge fluctuation, a huge jump in agency contributions. There's some charts in your packets that kind of give a comparison of what would happen if we gave back more of the fund balance now or retained a little bit more. You can kind of see, even in an individual city, what the impact will be. Some of the smaller cities don't see a large change. Of course, Modesto and County would be the ones that would get the brunt of the change. Option two is also outlined in your packet. We would give a smaller amount of fund balance back in that option, which is not recommended. So tonight, staff is recommending option one, that you adopt resolution number 2017-08, approving the final budget. With that, you would also direct staff to provide notice to the funding agencies of the adopted final budget, including the offset, and you would request that the county auditor apportion and collect net operating expenses. And staff is available for any questions.
All right, any questions for staff?
Sarah, back to, sorry, I looked down when you just finished that. Option two, it changed, we talked about an additional 25,000, and I see 50,000 there. I guess that's reducing the 70 down by 20,000. Is that right?
Right. What I should have shown you here was actually the reserve funds. Let me go back. It would essentially be taking your reserve funds that you're showing here, and it would be adding an additional category for $25,000 that we'd be setting aside as a long-term liability. So you'd be actually just adding a reserve fund and reducing the agency contributions slightly.
Reducing the, yeah, we'd be adding more to our reserve and reducing the amount that we will apply towards the agency contribution.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I get that we can't go the full 168,000, which we kind of talked about. Why aren't we reserving for this unfunded pension? And I understand that's a moving target. It's going to be constantly moving depending on the stock market, depending on so many different things going on. So, but I would recommend that we do go with the option two and put some more money aside, reserve the additional 20,000, I guess. Is that right, or 25,000?
Yeah, it's actually 25. It ended up being the spread is slightly different, but that 5 is in there somewhere.
Okay, yeah. So I would encourage us to put an additional 25,000 aside for reserves. At least we're recognizing that this liability is out there. We're not going to accrue, which isn't realistic for the full amount, but it definitely is us just being a little bit more conservative and keeping some money aside for those rainy days. So.
Commissioner Olson?
Thank you. I am so not following. So I don't know why, but I need some clarification. So I thought option 2 was the less conservative. That option 2 we would be setting aside 50,000, and option 1 we would be setting aside 70,000.
Those are actually the amounts that we're giving back.
Giving back.
So-
So in either option, we're setting aside 25,000.
In option 2, instead of giving back any
70, we're going to give 50 and set aside 25. And where does the other 5 come from?
The 5 I actually used in the lengthier chart that was in your packet. I actually used that to help out the next year, kind of give it a little bit. So
Okay.
we'd actually,
A head start.
yeah. So at least we had some extra funds to give back.
Okay. And why wouldn't we set aside 50 or 70,000? All of it? Instead of giving it back to these agencies? Because I'm not sure it makes really a positive net impact on any of the agencies' budgets.
Yeah.
Please correct me if anybody feels otherwise, but would it be more prudent to just set aside all 50 or all 70,000?
We could, and I think one of the other things we were looking at is that general reserve fund that we have could be applied to anything. So this long-term liability, I was talking to the auditor about when would this actually come up? When would this be something that was due?
Right.
Which is unknown. The only scenario we could come up with is if LAFCO suddenly didn't exist or the retirement plan itself.
You mean if it came due all at once?
Right. That it would actually be due. And we were saying, at that point, if LAFCO was put in that position, we would likely apply the general reserve fund to any of that amount as well before trying to draw any additional monies from the city and county. So you can actually use that 68,000 that's there in your general fund if you want to think about that as also contributing towards that as a just in case.
So I think the thought process there was, because we really established this 15%, I think last year or a couple of years ago that we started to put the reserve aside for that. And then, and now we're talking about putting an additional amount aside of this 25,000. And the thought process is give the rest back to the agencies. There's no reason for us just to be sitting on their money.
Sure.
And let them have it back to use. So.
Sarah, if I understand this correct, a lot of this is with investments and stuff, and then like we've been on a pretty good run. If we go into another downturn and the economy's not doing good, that's going to raise your unfunded liability even more. Is that correct?
It could also raise contribution rates and, the amount the employee is paying towards the program as well. There's a lot of unknowns there. But yeah, it could actually raise it up. It could lower back down again after things recover. We don't really know.
Well, I agree with Terry here. But the one part I wanted to make sure we did was the accrued leave, because that's something, employee leaves. I mean, I've had experience in our agency, much higher number than that, can be quite shocking, especially if you get in a tough economy or there's no development. We have to change our staffing here at LAFCO. It's quite surprising. I don't want to leave a position open because I don't want to go ask for $20,000 out of each agency to try to cover employee costs. And I agree. I mean, I understand that it's a moving target as far as retirement, but it does seem prudent to at least recognize it and start putting a little bit of money there, because I really honestly can't see that number getting smaller. I really can't see that. So it'd be nice just to kind of keep chipping away at it so it's there. And it always, I mean, we can always kick it back at some future date if something changes. So
Any more
I support
questions?
option 2 too. Option 2 does have the accrued leave in it as well.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Any questions more for staff before I open it to public? Okay, let me open it to the public. Anybody wishing to speak? Graham?
I'm not sure this is exactly on topic, but I would like for you to consider as commissioners and as LAFCO staff that you make some opportunity for interns. If you look at what's happening in America, all of our major, effective, world-changing industries, Google, Facebook, SpaceX, Tesla, they all have interns. They all are involving young people, and they're getting a really good deal. They're getting lots of labor at not a lot of cost. So I realize that might add to the budget, but I think we really need that. These are not jobs that you learn on the job. You all know that. And we need to get our young people engaged early on. Internship might be a way to do that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Alan, I think we actually, it's a great idea, and we talk about additional costs, but we actually in the county use interns often, usually unpaid, just for them to gain the experience. So I'm sure at the CEO's discretion, definitely could come up with some of our executive directors, some interns to get involved in cheap labor. It's great experience for them, and then they have that as they try to move on in their resume. So, yeah.
Mayor O'Brien?
I have a question of clarification, Commissioner, Chair, on the unfunded liabilities. That is accrued over an employee's total employment, correct? So the staff here is only a short term on LAFCO, but yet LAFCO has to pay for the entire amount. But now, how about if they were at the county transportation? If they were, would the county not have to take up some of that liability and not put it all the way across? Because it's different pots of money for different liabilities, and this is an unfunded liability that came across the board.
It does bring up a good point, though, about the way the liability is calculated for LAFCO. They're not actually looking at our employees individually and our years of service. They are literally taking, 4,000 plus, however many participants there are in Stansera, and then dividing that out and saying, well, 3 people on average would be this X amount. So that even speaks to even more how uncertain this number is. It's really just an average.
So your point, Richard, is good, but it doesn't track that employee and then move them as they move into a different department, and it's just this number is so random, not necessarily random, but it's so not tied. It's just tied to positions, not individuals, and it's just an estimate as to what 3 positions would cost as far as their funding of their in this defined benefit plan that we have through.
Unfunded liabilities throughout the state, whether it's Stansera or with CalPERS. CalPERS for 44 employees in the city of Riverbank is $290,000 a year. 3 employees, 182,000. What did you say it was?
Yeah.
168,000.
168. That's really disproportionate.
And I don't think that's per year. I think that's the cost that it would be for these employees upon retirement. That somebody has to fund that, right? This is a balance that we're going to.
You have to pay that unfunded liability sometime.
Right.
If that's the total fund, unfunded liability.
They're looking at it as if Stansera right now is 60% funded or 70% funded, this is that leftover that's not accounted for.
This is what still would be due if we shut down the office, shut down the county today, and everyone went on retirement. There's a pot of money that's already in there. And
I understand all of that.
Yeah.
It's just that the funding for 3 individuals of $162,000, in addition to all the others that they're paying, is a little bit problematic.
I think it's the 160 is the total, and our annual payment, the comparable to Riverbank, would be $25,000 if we approve option 2 tonight.
No, that's not what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get at that, first off, it's disproportionate to what the rest of the state in their unfunded liabilities, even though Governor Brown is putting, $1.4 billion towards CalPERS this year, or maybe even more than that.
5.5 or something.
Yeah, but that's just for state. But if you spread that over the amount of employees, it's a heck of a lot less than Stansera. And that accrued, a lot of that outside of LAFCO by employees that are still current, but it got that portion, let's say, in transportation, even though they may be in LAFCO just for a couple of years.
So I think it's too bad we don't have Jim here, Jim DiMartini here tonight, because he's not that we don't love having Kristen here.
Oh, no.
Okay,
There's much more about Stan Sarah.
But our Stan Sarah, let me just say, Stan Sarah is, I think we're somewhere around 78% funded. I think is a number, I can't remember what the final number will be this year, where we are, but somewhere around there, we're in much better shape than CalPERS. I know we are, as far as our funding, how much money we have sitting there in the bank if we were closed down today, how much our additional liability would be to finish it out. And that's what all this is just the additional amount that would be needed over and above.
So it's just proportionally.
It's an imaginary number generated, no offense, by accountants.
Actuarials, not accountants.
To represent a possibly what somebody would owe.
Yeah.
It's no real reality.
I do understand. That's just the way it's being split. All right.
And it doesn't make any sense either. No, I agree with you.
It's actuarials that figure that number, not accountants. I just want to make sure we got that clear.
Okay, so bringing it back here. Any last questions for staff and anybody else from the public wishing to speak? Okay, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back. What is the will of the commission?
I move to accept option 2.
Motion for option 2.
I will second that.
And we have a second. Let's go ahead and call the roll, please.
Yes.
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 Okay, we have a 4-0. Thank you so much for that. And now we can move on to commissioners' comments. Anything from our commissioners? Welcome, your second night. Pretty cool.
Thank you. Very easy night.
All right, and if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go up front. So I had the honor 4 years ago of being the vice chair and being able to share with everybody who we would choose, and we chose Annabelle to be on for the last 4 years. Yes. It has been my honor to serve with you. You have been a professional. You've always done your homework, and you really came to the table with ideas, and it was just, you were a blessing. I really enjoyed you. So on behalf of LAFCO, we want to thank you for your 4 years of service.
Thank you, Amy.
Speech?
She interviewed me with Bill O'Brien.
Yes.
And I was scared. There were lots of applications.
O'Brien.
No. Anyway, I just would like to say it has been a pleasure serving with you, and really exciting to finish my land use experience with LAFCO. When Bill appointed me to be the Stanislaus County Planning Commissioner for his district, I think within 1 month I said, I want to be in LAFCO because I realized then that the annexations of the cities were voted for here. So really it has been a pleasure to sit with you. I will miss you. I will see you sometimes, I think. I'll also miss the staff. The staff has just been excellent. And the one thing I'm not going to miss, tonight I went to go pick up my husband to come with me, and I didn't have to read a packet. And I thought, hey, you know, this is really nice. So anyway, but I will be reading the packet. And you guys have a lot of things coming before you that's very important. And but thank you so much. It has been my pleasure. I love this county, and I want it to be healthy for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you, Annabelle. Okay, let's do the executive officer's report.
So upcoming for your next meeting, June 28th, we have scheduled a LAFCO 101 workshop. So we'll be sending out flyers to the cities and all the special districts, and hopefully it'll be a good workshop. On the horizon, we've received an application from the Eastside Water District for an annexation of about 8,900 acres. It's a pretty large proposal. We're actually going through it right now, looking at a few items that are still outstanding. But that will also be coming to the commission in the next couple months. And that is all.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. So our next meeting will be June 28th, as she said, and if I have a motion and a second for adjournment?
So move.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Thank you, everybody, for coming.